That have the book, and I have to read a little of this. On page 29, those of you that have the big book, I don't know if you see, is yours like this, Sister Sylvia? Okay, it is. Those of you that have the book on page 29, on the right-hand side at the bottom, it says, and let me just read a little bit of this to sort of start the lesson off. It says, the reason serving God and living the Spirit-filled life seems to be a constant struggle for some individuals has to do with their allowing too many wrong influences to weaken their spiritual man. Living the Spirit-filled life is not a struggle when we surround ourselves with the right influences. This requires us to make good choices daily. And one of the things that I want to talk about is that we're living in a life in this present generation where we are surrounded by all kinds of negative, seductive, sensual influences. And we're in this world. We're not coming out of it. We're in this world. And part of it, I don't know how many of you, I always read the background in the lessons. I find them so informative. And one of the things he did, he compares this to two dogs, in the lesson. And the analogy that he uses is the dog that you feed the most is the dog that's going to win. So if you have the spirit, and then you have the flesh. And wherever we feed, and one thing I found kind of interesting, what we feed our minds determines our lifestyle or our behavior. A daily choice as to what we feed our minds and spirits. We have a daily choice. Somebody get me, and it's the Lord's Prayer, okay? And it's not really his prayer. It's what he gave us. It's the prototype of what a prayer should be. But I want to go there for a minute. Matthew 6, chapter 7 to 11. Somebody get that for me right quick. And we're talking about being led by the Spirit. And the place where I want to zero in, those of you that have it, is the Lord's Prayer. And when I say the Lord's Prayer, it's not the prayer that he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, but it's what he taught us, it's how he taught us to pray. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And where I want to zero in is where it says, give us this day our daily bread. Does everybody see that? Yes. Give us this day our daily bread. And many of us think in terms of food. But I'm going to expand this definition to include lifestyle. If we're asking in this prayer, and this is the way he told us to pray, and this is what really caught my attention about the prayer. I said everything that God puts in the Word of God is important, and he doesn't just haphazardly put it in there. So there was a reason why he gave us this prayer as an instructional prayer, as the prototype of how we should pray. And I thought about that. We don't think about it. Give us, in this prayer, he's asking God to give us this day our daily bread. Our substance. What do we need for this day? Not only to fill our physical bodies, but our emotional bodies. You know, we don't think of it, but we are a total, and God is concerned with the total man. And we have a total capacity. We have an emotional needs. We have physical needs. Totally. So how many of us actually stop? And when we get up out of bed, because we don't know what's going to befall us, Sister Sylvia, but how many of us actually ask God to give us, meaning the total picture of what we need to survive that day? Because remember, we are feeding this flesh, not only food, but emotions are coming into this flesh. We have we have senses. We have the eye sense, so our eyes are constantly seeing all kinds of images. And many of them are not positive. On the billboards, most of the billboards out there have some type of sensual image. The TVs, the TV programs are off the charts. And I'm not anti-TV, so let me erase that. So somebody said this sister's preaching against TVs. But we have to make a choice on what we look at on the TV. The computers, the same thing. They've got all kind of things that come into our senses. Our eyes is the biggest gate. Our ear senses, our touch senses. So each thing that comes into our bodies literally affects us one way or the other. Okay, it's going to affect us one way or the other. So every day when we get up, our senses are being bombarded by different things, by different entities. Some of them positive, but many of them negative. So do we, and we're talking about here, remember, the subject of this lesson is the spirit, living in the spirit, or the spirit, like I put on the board, led life. So are we asking God's spirit to feed us daily with the things that our spirit, that he needs to feed us with? Or are we just getting up in the morning and wandering in this world and accepting everything that the world puts into our spirit? Because if we do, what will happen is we'll find that this flesh, because there's more stuff out there in the flesh. And let's face it, most of us have to struggle to pray. I'm just not going to lie. I mean, my flesh many times does not want to get up, and I'm still struggling with this early morning thing. Really, just be honest. My flesh does not want to get up early in the morning to pray. But you know, when I used to work, my flesh would get up in the morning and turn on TV. I remember what Sister Royal said, how she got up and started looking at Facebook. And that's when she recognized there's a problem. So what are we feeding? And if we feed the more of this we feed, the bigger this is going to be. And the less of the spirit man we feed, the smaller he's going to become. Are we praying on the level that we should? Are we coming to, as Brother Wall always gives us a plug for Bible class, Sunday school, morning service? Are we into the Word like we're doing? Are we fasting? Because, so who's getting the most attention here? Is it this? Because the one that gets the most attention is going to grow the most. And therefore, the biggest one has what? The more authority and the more power. So the bigger, whoever's the biggest, so that's why the struggle many times come in, because that flesh is grown so that it's able to do what? Almost disappear this spirit man. And before you know it, we're what? We become carnal. Yes. And a carnal person is what? That's enmity against God. Okay, I had wrote some things down here. Our bodies are like sponges. In this sense, we absorb something every day. Every day of our life, we absorb something. Okay? So that's why it's so important. And we're going to see these daily. It doesn't stop. Like sometimes you say, oh, I had a good time in church on Sunday because I spent 6 or 7 hours absorbing the word. Okay, that was Sunday. So I'm high up here. But remember, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday come. We cannot just stop one day. We have to absorb or eat our daily bread. We have got to eat this thing every day in order to keep it under control, okay? We have to feed our minds and spirits every day. And this is where choice comes in, because we have to choose, and I wrote some notes here, to surround ourselves with righteous influences. Righteous influences. And sometimes these choices are hard to make, because sometimes they're friends, associates, places we used to go that we literally have to cut off because they're not what? Feeding the spirit man. They're feeding the flesh. Well, that's the end of that. I hope you didn't catch that on YouTube.